Welcome to the Big Kickoff Football Show with Mr. Neil Dobbs, David Bugle and myself, Roy Shanahan. A lot to talk about this evening. We've got Manchester United stumbling over the line. We've got Liverpool looking hot and promising. And Manchester City need a striker. Okay, and we haven't talked about that before, so we might discuss that one. Dave, we'll start off with Manchester United against West Ham. West Ham, difficult team to play against. We've seen what happened last year, but there was a few incidents in this game. It was Manchester United 1-2-1 against West Ham, but a couple of incidents. I think we'll go straight into the main one, which is Mark Noble coming off the bench at the 95th minute to take a penalty. One, because he's club captain, but mainly because I think he had scored his last 10, but the team had missed their last 4. So, where did you sit on this one?
From the get-go, I had a bad feeling. Do you know when you're only being brought on to do one thing? It's literally the last kick of the game, and you're just like, you know, you like the fact that he's a regular penalty taker. That's grand if he was playing every week, but he hasn't played really much at all year. So you just had a bad feeling. It's easy to I wouldn't hammer him, fair play to him for stepping up and doing it, but I don't think I would have made that call. I don't think I would have given him that choice. I don't think he would have stood up and went, I don't think I should. He's Mr. West Ham, he'd step up, but I don't think he should have been given that chance. It's easy to say it now because he missed, but I don't know what it was. I just felt bad. I was watching American football only a few minutes ago, and the kickers know they're coming on. So what do? They practice. You know, this guy is literally, take your top off, quick, get on. You're taking a penalty. And by the way, we need this to get a point against United at home. Big pressure kick, and as soon as De Gea said that, you could see it coming. Unfortunately, you know, it's one of them things. But I just wouldn't have given him the opportunity. I think it was a poor decision, to be honest.
Yeah, Neil, we've seen it at the Euros. Gareth Southgate did it with, I think it was Sancho and Rashford, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It didn't work out then, and as Dave has put it really, really well there, the American footballers get their time to practice. There's no practice there. He was stone cold. He wasn't even going to be brought on, so he didn't even have a chance to get a normal warm-up going again. Brought on stone cold, probably wasn't the best decision.
Yeah, like with a penalty as well, you want to, and tournaments in the England scenario, you can mentally prepare yourself. You know, you've got a bit of time between, you know, coming on the pitch and taking the penalty. Whereas today, as Dave said, he wasn't mentally prepared. He was thinking, this is no bother. The game is done and dusted. And all of a sudden, right, quick, get on the field. It was all a little rush. But the pressure, again, look, penalties, the big penalty misses always come down for generations over that one moment of pressure. Doesn't matter if you scored your last 10, even the best players, and sometimes regularly the best players on the pitch miss the big penalties. So I think it just added more pressure to a situation that already had pressure in the last minute to score a penalty to get a draw. And he wasn't man enough to do it, but a kind of a poor decision to put him in there, I think. Let one of the lads on the pitch that was having a decent game, that was striking the ball well, that had a bit of confidence, let them go and do it.
And Neil, Ronaldo scores again. Lingard come back and haunt them. You'd nearly seen this in the waters that this was going to happen.
Yeah, Ronaldo's an interesting one, Roy, because I was looking at clips for today, and I came across Ronaldo's goals now over the last, whatever it was, 5 or 10 goals. And it's not like Ronaldo's cleanly striking the ball. He's always in the right place, and the best strikers, they find a way of finding the back of the net. Like, he hit the ball today, he probably should have scored first time, but it rebounds nicely to him, a little bit kind of like last week, a bit fortuitous. Lingard's goal was a super goal, but again, it's a kick in the rocks when it comes back to haunt you like that, when it was a player that they were obviously interested in. But isn't that football to a T? When you're down, you're down.
Interesting here from Jimmy. I thought Moyes had a dirty grin in his face, thinking he was getting one up on United. Quite possible. What do you think of that, Dave?
Who knows, you know, because you seen his delight when they got the first goal. He was bang up for it today, and he would have loved nothing better than to turn one over on them today at home, especially with Ronaldo. And, you know, United being a level that he probably would have dreamed of being at, you know, when he was there. So, yeah, I missed it, but I tell you, if he did, I wouldn't be a little bit surprised. So good on
him. When I looked at Manchester United today and I seen Ronaldo, a lot of Manchester United fans seeing it on forums afterwards, screaming for penalties. There was 3 different penalty occasions that Ronaldo was involved in. First one, I can't even remember what the first one was. First one, I think. What was it?
Is that the one with Soufal? Where that's the one I think is the clearest one.
Oh, so we ran into him. The second one was, I think he kind of was going over a little bit early. Third one was when he was pulled back. What did you make on all those penalty decisions?
Yeah, like, very surprised the first one wasn't given. I think he knew what he was doing, but I don't think there was any way, even though he knew it was coming. Soufal was where he was. They were going to clash one way or another. So regardless of whether Ronaldo made sure it's irrelevant, I was very surprised it wasn't given. I probably ranked them that way. First one, most obvious, then the second one, and then gradually the third one. So maybe 2 out of the 3, like the first and second, definitely maybe. And then the third one, whatever. But the only thing I will say, and it's not to be bitchy or anything like that, but I was a bit surprised Souček didn't get one down the other end with Wan-Bissaka, because it went the other way. But apparently maybe the reason why he was given a free was offside, which is fair enough, and that's grand. But when he blew, I was convinced. I was like, this is another penalty. But if I was, not Ronaldo, but if I was a United fan, definitely the first one, and then gradually, as it goes down, maybe less likely. But that first one, regardless, I was very, very surprised. There was no other way. Like, they were going to clash. Soufal, I don't think he was trying to pull out. Well, not pull out, but I can understand why Ronaldo was pissed off, because I would have been. Put it this way: if he was in Liverpool red, I'd be going nuts.
Yeah, I was. I'm keen on Manchester United, but and shows there, and I couldn't even remember the amount of times that he did go down, which one it was, because I actually thought none of them were penalties. I thought the first one, I think he purposely dived, he purposely ran into him looking for the penalty. I think the second one, that it would have been a penalty if he wasn't falling over already. He looked like he was already going over. If he'd had kept his run, it would have been a definitely penalty, because he dived in. So people will say, well, he dived in, he took him eventually. But I think he's known for falling over very easy. So his reputation probably damages him in that position.
Yeah, and you've seen the way they're trying to go about it this year. And in fairness, I can't argue with it, because there's nothing better. It happened yesterday a few times. It's happened over the last few weekends where maybe they should have been given frees, but they're waving them on. And it's to counteract the crap that we see every week, the play acting, and it's still there. There's evidence of it all weekend as well. Like, it's not happening as much, but they're not buying it as much now. And it's a pleasure to see. So one or two of these decisions are going to go against every team, Liverpool and City and United included. There's going to be 1 or 2 penalties that we should get, and we're not going to get them this year. And you're going to have to just bite the bullet with them, because what they're trying to do, I'm all for it, to be honest, regardless of how it was quiet for a while, but now it's kind of rearing its head a little bit again, which is no surprise. But as regards letting the game flow a little bit more to 1 or 2 of these innocuous challenges, it's a joy to see. And unfortunately for people like Ronaldo, and say, I presume the likes of your Salahs and Fernandes, I can't think of other players at the moment, but the lads who like to go down easy, they're going to struggle for a while, and I've no issue with that.
Yeah. Neil, Manchester United won today. Wasn't the greatest performance ever. They scraped it in the end. I thought he picked the right team. I thought he put 2 sitting midfielders. He put Pogba out on the left instead of having Pogba and Fernandes in a 3-man midfield, which I don't feel works for them. I thought Solskjaer actually made all the right decisions today, but he has come in. I suppose there's a lot of criticism over the start of the season, I suppose, with Southampton game, with young boys the other day. Is that criticism fair, or is it a little bit harsh?
I think, you see, Man United now are in a situation, right, where I think they're more favoured because of the signings that they've made. I think there's greater expectation on them, and as a result, there's greater expectation on Solskjaer. And now what's happening is people are beginning to pick apart his decisions a little bit more. Like during the week, he got an awful lot of flack for pulling out Ronaldo, putting on Lingard, and some of the calls that he makes in general, I think. Even last week, we were saying on the show about Matic started as the holding mid, and it left him quite vulnerable. So I think people now are looking at Man United with a different light than they were maybe last season, where they're expecting him to be more prolific. They're expecting him to have more domination, possession, and to really start to challenge. And I think they're making hard work of an awful lot of games since the league has started. It doesn't help, but I think Solskjaer always had that in the locker, where in Europe in particular, he would have one very, very poor result, and then all of a sudden go and beat Paris Saint-Germain away, but the consistency doesn't seem to be there. And I think that's what people are getting at the moment. Because let's be honest, the best coaches, it's very hard sometimes to pick holes in the way they set their teams up and the way they rotate their players. Klopp and Pep being two of them. Whereas Solskjaer, I just don't think is of that ilk, and therefore it leaves him maybe a little bit more open when he does make a few kind of peculiar decisions that people are questioning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just mention something there, right? The Champions League game during the week. Who did you watch it on? Did you watch it on Irish TV or?
I watched it on Irish TV. Yeah.
Yeah, the difference between Ireland and England, it was all about Solskjaer and how poor a decision it was to take him off. Well, the two boys were like, he bottled it and should have took him off at half time because he's not going to lead from the line defensively. And I just laughed because it's just the difference in opinions. And I'm not saying whether you agree or not, but it was just very, very funny. Everyone in the UK were very much similar that, they shouldn't have took him off in the first place. Well, the two lads thought he bottled it and said, listen, he's going to be the worst defender from the front there is. And he should have been off at half time over anyone else, which I just found it very interesting. I'm not saying I agree with it, but it was just an interesting take.
And what do you make, Dave, of the criticism that Rio Ferdinand put out there about Ronaldo and Fernandes' antics on the sideline?
Yeah, see, I only seen a picture. Did it happen a few times, Roy? Because I only seen
just a couple of times.
Snapshot. Yeah, I only seen a snapshot. So if it was only the one time, you'd be like, right, fair enough. If it was happening a few times, yeah, it's not pretty. And obviously, there's a bit of form on it with the Euro 2016, obviously, because it irritated me then, you know. But look, I think with Solskjaer, there's a few people, and it's a bit similar to, I suppose, Kenny in Ireland. Like, it's 50-50. There's people who don't mind Ollie, but there's the other half who are just any excuse to try and shift them. But if, to be honest, if it was someone else, I'd probably hold more weight with it. But I'm not a big fan of a lot of what Rio says. It's a bit over the top and dramatic. So I'd rather not give him too much action, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay, we'll leave that one there. Liam wants to talk about the FAI quarter-final cup matches and the semi-final of the FAI Cup draw that's coming up. Liam, you're on the wrong show. That's on Wednesday night, and we'll talk about it then, but I'm chuffed that you're listening tonight. So keep an eye out. I think we're going to have one on Wednesday night this week, so it's the LOI Sports Bar, and that'll be up on our Facebook page. So do like that page, and you'll find out all that information. Manchester City 0-0 with Southampton. It's not a result that anyone would have put down on their pool. We're expecting Manchester City to blow everyone away, and especially during the week when they've put a whole load of goals past Leipzig in the Champions League. You're thinking, yeah, Southampton here, these are going to crumble. But 0-0, does this show that the striker that they wanted, they still need badly?
I think so. Look, I think a proper striker will help City regardless, even with the talent that they have. I still do think they need a kind of fulcrum in attack that they can play off. But in City's case, and I was almost going to lean in with Liverpool, with United, with a couple of the teams that played in Europe, I was looking at my Paddy Power coupon this week and I was thinking I'm going to go against a couple of the teams that have played in Europe and are now playing on Saturday, in particular the 3 p.m. The West Ham United, obviously, they both played in Europe, but Leicester was one I fancied to lose today, and they did. City, funnily enough, I went for a handicap minus a goal because I thought Southampton were going to have way more energy than them, that they were going to kind of get at them more than they maybe normally would. And then Liverpool were the same. I thought Liverpool were running on fumes at times yesterday. So I don't think it really surprised me 0-0, maybe 1-1, 2-1. If you were going to go for a draw, but you still expect City to do the job at home. But the other thing I say is Pep had a little go with them during the week over the crowd, as if he was kind of worried, listen, we need your support. You're not filling out the stadium. We'll need you for the weekend. But Jurgen Klopp did the same thing. He came out and said, listen, we're going to need you on the weekend. We're running on empty. We put a lot into the game tonight. So when I watched, maybe I only got about an hour of the City and Southampton game. You could see it coming. City were huffing and puffing, but there was just something a little disjointed about them. There was something that they weren't free-flowing. I don't think he's got his best 11 on the field at the minute. There's a couple of players from the Euros that are still not firing on all cylinders. So whereas it doesn't, I think the result is probably as a 0-0 as a shocker. The result maybe as a draw probably shouldn't be based on the kind of week that they've had. And I think you're going to get a couple more weeks of that over the next couple of months where lads are playing on a Wednesday night, Thursday night, and then getting a Saturday morning draw.
Yeah. Dave, if you look at the Manchester City squad, do they have excuses? I mean, really, it's not his strongest 11, but it's still probably the strongest 11 in the league if he doesn't have a strongest 11 now. It's an immense squad that he has. So really, with Europe, should that be an issue for Manchester City? Maybe with Liverpool, they don't have as strong a squad, but they still have a decent squad.
Yeah, like we talked about it before the season started, why we'd still have City as favourites is because of the quality of their squad. So of all the clubs, they should suffer the least. Realistically, to only have one shot on target in 90 minutes for City is not a stat that I'm sure is quite common for them. But then again, that shouldn't be a surprise then if it's 0-0. It's in them, and they have it in them once in a while where they don't score early. Like I've said a few times, they start to tighten up and they start to get a bit desperate. And they were kind of coming from the hard angles again where not much was happening. But they did nothing that really, really worried Southampton too much, like as in clear-cut chances. And a lot of guys who would rather probably create more than score. Yes, they pick up their share, but they're not known for being the main goal getter. So the issue that I've talked about is slowly rearing up. Whether it's a permanent thing or not, I don't know. Because this Torres lad, I think, is a bit of a midfielder / attacker as well. I don't think he's a main striker. They have one, and for some reason don't play him in the middle, which is baffling in Jesus. So Pep is going to have to kind of grow up a little bit and bite the bullet on one or two things and kind of go back to basics on some of it, because they can't afford to drop points at the moment the way Chelsea, and I know it's only 5 games in, but the way Chelsea and Liverpool are setting up, dropping points at the moment is critical, because the potential of a 90-point season again at the moment could be likely. So you can't drop too many points. So their setup needs to be looked at, because I brought it up a few times before and I was going to bring it up today, but I didn't want to get into debate. But the likes of De Bruyne and stuff, they need to get him on that field. But at the same time, is he going to be the difference maker? It'll be interesting. His best season was when they didn't win the league. His 2 quiet seasons is when they won the league. So whether he's the main man to really drive it on is questionable, because on the many times I've watched him against Liverpool or in any European games, I don't notice him. So as pretty as he is and as much as we enjoy him, is he going to be the answer when he's back fully fit? And for me at the moment, I'd question it. It's goals for me.
Yeah. Neil, was getting Jack Grealish in a big mistake? Because to go another 50 million or 20 million or 30 million, whatever it was, to get Harry Kane in, they seem to have an awful lot of players like Jack Grealish. So what was the thought process behind getting Grealish? And as you said, Mahrez, Foden, De Bruyne on the bench, they have them type of players.
Yeah, it's a strange track, Jack Grealish. I think this is almost like a Pep personal kind of decision here, where I think there was a risk with getting Harry Kane, which turned out to be true. At one stage, it looked like we're going to get them both, but I think they looked at this early in the transfer window and they said, we're maybe not going to get Kane, or there's a risk involved with Kane. So I think they said they had the chance to get Grealish. They were also a little bit more willing. Villa were a lot more willing to do business because they wanted to spend that money a little bit earlier. So that suited. The risk would have been to hold on, wait for Kane, and then possibly lose out on Grealish because you've waited too long and you haven't given Aston Villa time to kind of compensate and to spend. I think it's still glaringly obvious, even in a team as good as Man City and the way Pep had them playing last season, the whole rotation through the 9 and through the 10 and stuff, it still only masks the long term. You can't play the way you want to play without a target man. And then now they've missed Kane and they've a lot of kind of square pegs and round holes at the moment. That's not really helping them. And as Dave is saying there, your supposed best player in De Bruyne is taking a while to come back to form or getting up to fitness, whatever way you want to look at that. It's a little bit like City did do this last year. They were a slow burner up till Christmas, and then they were absolutely different class. So I wouldn't be worried if I were City, but they just want to be worried. They want to be careful they don't give themselves too much of a gap to come back from, because different mentality come back from a gap of 10 points rather than leading by 10 points. So they just want to be careful in what they do.
Yeah. Okay. So we do reckon they might struggle a little bit though without Harry Kane. Okay. Billy has got on. Noble should never be taking that penalty. Do managers not learn? Surely Moyes has seen this before in regard to bringing penalties or people on not warmed up. I mean, we said it before. They didn't see it at the Euros. Well, he must have been watching the final because it was blaringly obvious that didn't work for Gareth Southgate. So I can't understand myself, Billy, why he would do that. Liam said, in my opinion, with Ronaldo back at Manchester United, he'll transform the team. I can't see them win the league, but definitely push for Champions League. Not a Man United fan, just my opinion. Dave, I'll ask you to comment on that.
Yeah, look, as regards to penalty, it goes without saying. It's literally just one thing. Google his heat map when we get off the show, boys. There's literally a dot in the penalty spot, and that's it. Like, that's literally what Mark Noble did. So, as I said, he was probably already thinking, I got home in time for SAS, celebrity SAS, and Channel 4 with the wife, and have a beer or something. Here, get on the pitch to take a penalty, equalise against United. You what? It's just. It beggars belief, and a very, very poor decision by Moyes. And as for Ronaldo, yes, he will push them on. It's going to take a few more games, I think, to bed in a little bit more, so that lads realise that you don't always have to completely focus on Ronaldo all the time. Like, he's going to get goals. Don't worry too much. He's going to smell them. Like, some of his movement today was really good. You can see why he's different. There was one or two shots that went in. Everyone else was standing with their finger up the proverbial. He was already in on top of the keeper. He just smells everything, and that's the difference. He goes in every time because that one chance when it does spill, he's there and said, I told you so, So without a shadow of a doubt, he will, and United will bet in. And obviously, you've got Sancho as well, and one or two of the others to come back in Rashford, and if they can somehow get some good form, it can only be a good thing for United.
Yeah, absolutely. One of you have your phone on there, so I'll turn it off for you. Jesus Christ. Okay. I knew, Neil Dobbs, it was you.
I couldn't hear it with this.
Liverpool 3, Crystal Palace 0. Neil, for me, I've put it out there. Are Liverpool potential champions here? I see Chelsea. We'll talk about Chelsea. Chelsea are, without being amazing, winning games and winning them comfortably. But I see the very same thing in Liverpool. And if there's two of them in this league, it's definitely them two. If you look at Man United, not convincing. Manchester City, not totally convincing at the start. Although you did say exactly like that last year, and then they stormed the league. So we won't put them out of it just yet. But when I see Liverpool, I see a team that's definitely going to be there at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think so. Look, I think the question marks pre-season where you're sticking more or less with the same, say Panda 15, we'll call it. Can guys like Firmino, like Mane, rediscover the form of 2 years ago? Because last year was barren for them, absolutely barren. He's stuck rather than bringing any new players insofar as replacing any of the front three. And I think at the moment, Mane looks back to kind of what he was doing. If he's not scoring the goals, he's definitely making a nuisance of himself. Van Dijk is just massive, absolutely massive. Having Van Dijk there, even yesterday with Kanate making the debut, he was a little bit ropey at times, but Van Dijk, there's just a calmness around it. I don't know what channel, Dave, you watched the match on, if you watched the Liverpool game, but how many times did the commentator go calm as you like? Because you're just watching Van Dijk on the ball and everything is relaxed and there's no panic whatsoever. Alisson in goal, playing balls out to the centre-backs, both very comfortable on the ball. I think Liverpool have a very good foundation. I think their first 11 is excellent, absolutely excellent, and can challenge for a title with that 11. The only question mark is if they get another injury. So they got Harvey Elliott, could be out now for whatever 3 to 4 months or longer. An injury to like a Henderson or Thiago or someone around the middle just might scupper them a little. Let alone Salah, who seems to play every game now at the moment. So I think Klopp is doing the right thing in his rotation. I think he's managing them very well. I think he's making sure he's using the full squad because you're going to need them players come Christmas and he needs to keep them on match fit. So for now, it's all rosy. They've got great appetite. But there's kind of further tests ahead to see can that squad go a full season and kind of stay in there. Normally Liverpool chuck the kind of League Cup and stuff like that. They forget all about it. So I think that'll be the blueprint for this season as well. Go for the league, strong in the Champions League, and then see what happens after that.
Yep. I like this from Liam. He says, yes, 100% agree with Dave, a biggie. is saying about Ronaldo. So Biggie is the new nickname for you, Dave. I like it. I like it.
Smalls. I like it.
He also says Liverpool were very, and he does change it here to unconvincing. So Liverpool were very unconvincing against AC Milan in defence, but they still got the win. But early days off at the season and Champions League. What do you make, Dave, of, I suppose, Liverpool in the Champions League? We can touch on the Champions League slightly because we've had City and we've had United there and now Liverpool. Just on Liverpool against Milan, I thought it was going to be... I actually turned it off when they went 1-0 up. I thought this was over. I went and watched Bruges against Paris Saint-Germain. I thought that was a good game anyhow, so I don't think I missed out on too much. But as in, I believe the rest of the game was a good game. When I seen AC Milan go 2-1 up, I was kind of kicking myself. But is this a similar side that Liverpool? They seem to play the same sort of way week in, week out, and generally the same team week in, week out. Apart from the central defence, because now he has more options there. Is that going to help or hinder?
I suppose the real top teams, regardless, there's 2 or 3 lads that are undroppable, and you're going to see that later on with Chelsea and United. City, not so much because of the way Pep is, but like you're not dropping Ronaldo for any game when every game is important in the league. And at the moment, it looks like Salah and Van Dijk are the undroppables because the whole back line got changed yesterday, and Tsimikas didn't look out of place again and create a few goals with his set pieces. Milner, I was nervous because the last time I seen him against Zaha, I was actually in Anfield that day and Zaha just tore him a new one and he got sent off. So I was nervous, and thankfully he must have remembered because he played with a little bit of bite in him that he just didn't want to get caught out again. But with Liverpool, it's tried and true, but there's a little bit more back again this year. Like Liverpool do a bit of everything. Like as much as they can play slick, but they can play direct and they can play the crosses in. They're a bit of everything. You can't just say they just sit there and play in front of you because they do like that long switching ball with Van Dijk back in the side. They do like to get it wide and whip in balls and stuff. And even though they're not the greatest in the air, apart from maybe Jota, like it creates problems and causes problems and keeps you penned in. And they just pen you in and you crumble. Because yesterday they weren't great. It was the 3-0 flattered them, but they did enough. It's one of them where if they are successful at the end of the year, you tick the box and go, that was one of them. One ugly, and Palace gave him a bit of a game. The other day, maybe this is a bit of a fan of me, but I thought for 87 minutes Liverpool dominated Milan quite comfortably, and kind of switched off the lights for a few minutes when they got the 2 quick goals. Now there's a few other little scares, but I think overall, it was one of them typical first halves with Liverpool where they should have got the second goal to just kill us, and they didn't. And then of course, bang bang, rabbit in the headlights for about 2 minutes, and then second half they came out of the traps strong again. But they're in a nice bit of momentum. But I think why Liverpool, even though it's predictable, they've a couple of different hats. Like they like the counter attack, but they can also cope a bit better now with sitting with parking the bus because they like that long switching ball and then getting balls into the box and just pinning them in and making them crack. And that's what happened yesterday. It was all set. Oh, sorry. And the last thing is set pieces. They've scored the most set pieces than anyone in the last year and a half. So they're obviously working on them. And they scored from plenty of them yesterday, getting scraps from Van Dijk or Matip, kind of not winning, or not Matip, whoever was winning. There was 2 of them from set pieces. So they know what, Klopp does subtle changes. If you watch him every year, he kind of knows what their weakness is, and it doesn't make it obvious, but it's just little subtle changes. And obviously that's what Liverpool are doing. They're trying to get more goals from set pieces because the counter-attack has been taken away from them because everyone fears the pace of the 3 lads up front. So it's very kind of Kaiser Soze-ish. It's just little subtle changes, and all of a sudden you're scratching your head going, Liverpool are doing the same thing they always do. But as I said, it's just those little tweaks, and they're sitting pretty at the moment. The longevity of the season is what's going to potentially be their weak point. But that's it. If they can stay fresh and stay strong and keep the big boys fit, they're definitely going to be hopefully there at the business end.
Neil, Billy has a question about Mane and Salah. Might struggle when Salah and Mane go to the African Cup in January. That could be worrying for us. Do you see that as a big problem? I'm sure everyone else does.
Massive. Absolutely massive. Salah in particular now, I don't know what it is. I don't want to say Salah's been criticised, but I don't think Salah sometimes gets the idolisation that some of the like Suarez and Torres and stuff used to get. But I think this year in particular, and maybe off the tail end of last year, Salah is becoming an absolute beast for Liverpool. He is really, really elevated. Even in my opinion, it's like I always rated him. Don't get me wrong. But Jesus, I think he's phenomenal at the moment. His fitness, his levels, his energy, his creativity. When he's not scoring, he's setting people up. He's just getting better and better and better. And he's your real go-to guy when the chips are down. You know, he is your go-to guy. I think he's one of the best around at the moment. And he's in a serious, serious purple patch. Missing him in particular, I think you can do without Mane because you can switch Jota. You can kind of put Curtis Jones out there. He's a couple of little options. I don't think we have an option anywhere near the level of Mo Salah. So that would be a worry. They'd have to find another way of winning games, or maybe, as Dave is saying, sitting tight, something a bit more clever.
But they probably do have an option that's close to him. The problem is Mane is gone as well. So when you're missing, Neil, those two players, that's two huge gaps. So what way would you see it shaping up?
I think when Klopp is in the past, he's had an issue with some of the wide men being out or injured. He's gone a kind of a one up front and a five across the middle ish, and again a couple of kind of square pegs and round holes where he'd Oxlade-Chamberlain playing slightly higher or Curtis Jones playing slightly higher. It never really felt right. Sometimes he used to go to Origi to kind of spearhead and then try. Obviously, he was never really. I can't remember the time that he was missing Mane and Salah. But you'd be something like that where you're trying to push the attacking midfielders further up the field. Missing both of them is an absolute headache. Like, I mean, Manchester City missing, your Grealish and your Sterling, Chelsea missing Lukaku and Havertz, Spurs missing Son and Kane, United missing Fernandes and Ronaldo. Like, you can't find a solution, but he's going to have to find a way of maybe edging out points, be it by setting up a little differently at the back, making sure they don't concede and trying to nick a goal. It's hard to know how Klopp is going to do it, but he definitely has to find. I could see him the likes of Oxlade-Chamberlain, Firmino, and then maybe Curtis Jones / Origi.
Well,
yeah, he's going to have to do something with a little bit creative, but he generally goes to one up front. Be it he's defending the last 15 minutes of a game as a counter, or when he needs a kind of a plan B. So expect Jota up front on his own through the middle, or Origi up front, and then you get Jota and Curtis Jones or someone in beside him. But he has options. They're just nowhere near the caliber of Salah and Mane, in particular.
Dave,
Salah.
Is the African Nations Cup going to kill Liverpool's chances, or have they got enough to get them through those 2 weeks?
I don't know the amount of games, but thankfully one or two of the weekends could be the FA Cup. So it mightn't be as many games, but it's probably going to be 3-4 minimum. And obviously it's going to be before the Champions League if they're still there. But it's where we lost it last year as well. The irony of ironies, everything went tits up in January for us. So it could, if it went again and then it went again without your talisman, like I'm born when I say this, but Salah is up until this season one of only two players who consistently gets 20 goals a season. It's him and Harry Kane. But obviously Lukaku and Ronaldo might have something to say about that this year if they keep going. But that's how rare they are. So if you lose him, regardless of Mane, we're in trouble. And any team with somebody of that goal scoring caliber, you're in trouble. So 3 or 4 games, and I have to be honest, yeah, it is going to be in trouble when I say City dropping points now, when at the moment the old 90-odd point season again is potential. We missed 2 of our biggest talisman and the ultimate one. Yeah, it could be scary.
I just scrolled through as you were talking there, Dave. 1st of January, they've got Chelsea away, Brentford then, and then Crystal Palace on the 22nd. So they're the 3 possible games that they'll be missing out.
And then if they go forward, and if there's quarantining as well, Roy,
And if there's quarantine, and then it goes into Leicester in February. So
February, yeah.
It could be a big one there, and wouldn't have enough time to get someone else in either. So in January probably. So not of the class that you want to try and fill those boots in. So the question I'm going to give to you, Dave, is should the African Nations Cup be allowed to be played in January, because it makes absolutely no sense, and should clubs be compensated?
It's apart from, I think it was, I don't know whether it's because of the pandemic, but it was supposed to be in the summer. I don't know whether it was this season just gone or the year before, but It's always been in January for the last good few years because of the weather when they used to play in the summer. Yeah, considering the big European calendar, you think most tournament football should be in the summer because I think all the other continental championships are. So in that sense, yeah, but for whatever reason, it's been agreed, and it always was agreed for the last several amount of tournaments. So I'm not one of the angry ones. So in relation to compensation, no, it is what it is. But yeah, it'd be nice if they kind of lined up with all the other tournaments and play in the summer because like as much as it is a world and an international game, but the big boys all play pretty much in Europe. So and most of the continental championships are in our summer. So it'd be nice.
But then again, next year we'd be looking forward to a World Cup that's going to be on in November and December, and the leagues are going to be shut down for that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, kind of. But that's FIFA. They're the big boys. They can do whatever they want, and they know where they know where their sugar daddies are. You know what I mean?
Neil, let you have that one.
I think they've kept Shaqiri maybe as long as they could. Yeah, they could have held on to him for another season. Maybe when you look at Origi, who's still there. I think from Liverpool's perspective, they've kind of made a conscious decision to move on guys that are kind of stalled. They got rid of a lot of fringe players this year, and I think the idea behind it is to allow Curtis Jones, to allow Harvey Elliott, to give them opportunities to get into that position, and that's the position that Harvey Elliott and Curtis Jones would be playing and would be Shaq's position. I think Shaqiri had a good. I really liked him as a player. I thought even when he the bit part that he played it with great intensity, and you knew that he bought into the role that he had. Was it him wanting to go and play a bit more football? Was it Klopp saying, I have other guys that are coming through? It felt like probably the timing was just about right. Now, that said, come January when, the writing's on the wall and you pick up an injury and you're missing your two best players, and all of a sudden you're thinking Shaq would be a great option to have, but I guess we'll tell that at the time. If Harvey Elliott comes back pre-Christmas, which may or may not happen, Curtis Jones keeps getting game time, Oxlade-Chamberlain can find some sort of form, it won't be an issue. But it could be an afterthought that we all kind of say it would have been handy to have him in January.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting in January. Dave, Spurs 0, Chelsea 3. We would have predicted that Chelsea were going to do that. What is it about Spurs that they are so inconsistent? And what is it that they're missing to get that consistency?
Oh, that's the $1 million question, because it's been so long. They've been like this for years. Like they've enough to be dangerous, they've enough to threaten, but then when it really matters, they're lacking some. And it could be characters, like real characters. You could have quality, but you need, like I spoke, and I hate to go back to Liverpool, but you can go back to the United in the 90s, lads who really maximised who they are. Now, they're better players than this, but when you have people like Keane and Neville, these are guys who brought it every week without fail, and no one else was allowed to play under their standard. And I suppose Liverpool at this point, even though he's not their best player, but Henderson really does drive that home at Liverpool. A leader who just doesn't accept ordinary, and whether he's not the main man. But it could be something as simple as that now, because they have some quality players, but it's just who, like Kane included, who do you look there where you go, if you were on the pitch with them and you look left and right, who would you go, yeah, I'll roll up my sleeves for this guy? I couldn't name one. People might say Højbjerg, but he's just a bit of a bulldog who runs around. Like, I'm not so sure. Like, there's no leader, and there hasn't been for so long. And the classic game against Chelsea, when it mattered, they imploded and got nasty, and Kane and the boys have it in them. Like, there's no true leader on that pitch, and it could be, regardless of tactics and regardless of skills, there's just the character of the team has always been lacking, and I think it's the same again.
Yeah, when you look at Spurs' backline, Neil, since Vertonghen, I suppose, and Vermaelen started to get their rocky patch or coming to the end of their time. Before that, they were rock solid. Now it's a bit wishy-washy, isn't it? They're not as solid. But does it come down to? I mean, they've had managers there. That's 3 different managers now. Pochettino was there. He had a good backline there, but they started to wobble under Mourinho. They wobbled constantly, and now again they're being Spursy, as everyone likes to call it. I mean, is it just personnel?
I wouldn't say just personnel. I think Spurs are falling into the same category almost as Arsenal when it comes to their back line, that they can't seem to get a centre back partnership that works, and then they can't seem to get a back four unit that works. Very, very worrying that Jose Mourinho can go into a club. And I mean, let's be honest, that's his forte, is to sort out the defence, make them miserly, get them defending for each other, fighting for each other. And now you look at Spurs and they're shipping 3 goals against their rivals. Absolutely, I'd say they're sick over that. But looking at the team sheet, I mean, you look at Chelsea, you've got Rudiger, Silva, Christensen, stalwarts, Azpilicueta and Alonso left and right side. It's absolutely rock solid, that defence. And then Spurs, Emerson, Romero, Dyer, Reguilon. Like, come on, who are they? They wouldn't get into any other team in the top 6, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. So, whereas Pochettino had a really solid back line and play to their strengths, they have a lot of players that are just not good enough to put the mustard for them. Like, Spurs are decent enough midfield to forward. When you've got Kane, you've got Son, and even Lucas Moura, who I'm a big fan of. They've got goals in them, but it's no good if you're going to be shipping them in at the other end every week. So that's the biggest challenge for Spurs, is to rediscover their centre-back partnership, as we kind of discussed with Arsenal last week. What's their best partnership? Mourinho didn't know, and I don't think Mourinho knew when he left. So that has to be priority number one, is to sort out the defence.
I judge any manager who consistently plays Eric Dyer.
There you go.
Right. I judge any manager who consistently plays him. So unfortunately, Nuno, you're on my hit list as well.
Yeah, I think we'll all agree with that one. I don't think anyone's disagreeing with that. That's probably the statement of the night. Neil, when you look at Chelsea, as you've stated there, Thomas Tuchel has done a couple of interviews today. I thought he was brilliant in the interviews he did. Even after the game, he was discussing the first 45 minutes, saying we've won 3-0, but the first 45 minutes just weren't good enough. He talked about why they weren't good enough, and he just seems to know exactly what he wants from this team, and that he has a process that he's going to get through to get them there, and he's going to make sure that everyone is focused. And it just seems to be, I suppose, a respect for him, not just within the team, but even from football people looking at him. Everyone are already saying, like, people were talking about Thomas Tuchel when he finished up with Paris Saint-Germain, and they were slagging him off. And then he's come to England, and now he's a god again, because they actually see the real Thomas Tuchel, what he's about, the interviews, what he's demanding of the players, the sense that he's talking. He's definitely keeping that team, I suppose, on their toes, and he's well capable of keeping the personalities on their toes.
Yeah, do you know what it is, right? And just when you were speaking there, I was thinking to myself, do you know the way some managers are a very good fit for a club? Chelsea always had that kind of merciless, you come in, you do the job for a season. If you don't do the job, you're gone. They always had that. And in fact, when you look at Lampard, he was probably the only one that went in and got a little bit of extra time because of the transfer scenario and because he was a club legend. Tuchel came in with this, I would call it a serious, ruthless streak. He gave everyone a chance. You got your chance. Now I'm picking my first 11. And if you're not in that first 11, it's absolute tough. And that's the way it's going to be. I was looking at the team sheet there. Marcus Alonso started at left wing back again, which means Ben Chilwell still has not got into the side. Hudson-Odoi is not got into the side. Saul is not get into the side. Timo Werner will be a fringe player for Chelsea. So whereas Lampard was forced to play Werner until he came good, Tuchel doesn't have to do that because he didn't buy him. But now he's getting the best out of that team. He's Lukaku, which was the final piece of the puzzle. He's Havertz playing well, Mount playing well. They're a serious, serious side. But the best thing I think about Chelsea is the way he rotates the midfield with Kovacic, Jorginho and Kante. He's 3 really, really super players in them positions that can play in the diamond, that can play 2 in the hold. It's just talent all over the park. And as you say, Tuchel has a ruthlessness, but there must be something about him that the players are responding to, because there's no whinging going. Since he got rid of Tammy Abraham, there's been no rumblings coming out of Chelsea.
And his girlfriend.
It was a package deal. One of them or 2 of them went. So but that was it. Since he got rid of the kind of bad apple, and now look at them. There's no grumblings coming out because they feel they're on a mission now to go and achieve stuff. So he's gotten that right. He's galvanizing them. He's saying all the right words. I love his interviews. I think they're really frank and honest and open. Maybe that's the German in him, but it's really interesting how they're going to go.
Okay, just a couple of comments again. Liam on one, it's a long one. I'm not going to show it. Generally says that he agrees with Neil over Shaqiri. Dave, I'm going to get you to follow up these, and Liam again. The worrying thing about Spurs, they're brilliant players who still haven't won a trophy in so long. It's the worrying thing. Billy says, along with the backline, Spurs keeper has gone off the boil at the minute. So the two questions are, do they have brilliant players? And the keeper, I think for a long time now, even under Pochettino, Lloris was getting away with blue murder. He would be brilliant 2 out of 3 weeks, but that 1 week he'd cause you a bit of a problem. So he has never been rock solid.
Yeah, like with Lloris, there's certain players who are at clubs for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and you just kind of presume they're there all the time, but they could be actually the problem. I always used to refer to it as one of our own. John O'Shea was Sunderland. Sunderland struggled for 10 years, and I kept saying, well, he's there the whole 10 years. Maybe he's the problem, so maybe he should go. Oh, no, he's Mr. whatever. And I always feel it's a bit similar with Lloris. Like, maybe he is a big part of the problem as well. And enough's enough. He's been there through the bad. And let's face it, it's bad because they keep thinking they're getting there and then they slip. But without repeating ourselves, exactly what Neil said, that back line, you just scratch your head. They've never been replaced, the Belgian leaders that they had. Tanganga showed a bit of promise, but looking at Liverpool, say for example, this year, and even the likes of when City got back last year, and then potentially United this year, it's partnerships. And as for Chelsea, they're the proof is in the pudding. Rudiger was in the wilderness, and now he's arguably their better player, potentially over Thiago. And even Alonso, Jesus Christ, like he was dead and buried at United or Chelsea. Sorry, and now the two of them are arguably. He got man of the match today, and Rudiger's the main man. So it just goes to show you, I nearly said the proper one, but feck what people think, and you have to make the ruthless decisions. And Nuno needs to make one or two potential ruthless decisions, and sometimes the old guard have been there for long enough, gotta go. And And
could Harry Kane be in one of those decisions that he should have made?
Maybe because,
or maybe that wasn't his decision.
Yeah, you're probably right. It probably wasn't, but it might be at the end of the year because, he hasn't really kicked off yet. I don't know if he's even scored. I think he scored in Europe maybe, but he could be still a bit wounded from it all. And not only that, he's under a lot of pressure now because it's not just Salah he needs to chase down. There's Lukaku and Ronaldo. There's a couple of new sheriffs in town, and all of a sudden it's not the Harry Kane show. So he needs to get his finger out quick. Otherwise, they won't be coming back next year if he doesn't start banging in the goals, because City and the big boys will move on quite quick. Oh, geez, he only got 10 this year. The heart must be gone. See ya. And he's stuck at Spurs winning nothing. And that's how ruthless this game can be. So, I'm
going to stay with you on this one, Dave. Burnley, this is a discussion that you wanted to have. Has the bubble finally burst? When you're losing to a bottom three side like Arsenal, you're in a bit of trouble, aren't you? But yeah, no, it's there's been a few signs. There was a few signs last year, and they got themselves out of it, but they haven't started well this year.
Yeah, it just mirrors a little bit like Stoke, I suppose. Like they played a similar style, the up and at 'em, and for a few years, every top club used to hate going to the Turf Moor or Pittodrie. Is it Pittodrie? No, not Pittodrie. What's Stoke's ground called? Or Britannia. They used to hate going there because it was up and at 'em. The Bruce brothers as Barnes and Wood causing havoc. But slowly but surely, the big boys eventually find a way. They always figure it out. And even though they're not being battered necessarily by them, they're not quite as intimidating. Or, as I said, the guys figure it out. And even at Liverpool and Anfield the other day, I was a bit fearful. But then Liverpool just kind of kept them at bay. And even the two boys just didn't have much to offer. But to be honest, a bit similar to what I said about Lloris, the likes of Sean Dyche needs to be a bit bold as well. Wood, I think, maybe can stick around. But Ashley Barnes, it's like Jay Rodriguez. They're just players. They're just bodies. They're not really, they're strikers. I don't care if they work hard. You have to get goals, and they don't get enough goals, in my opinion. And it's going to bite them, I think, this year. And it just had that feeling that, the up and at them, put them under pressure, send the ball in long and long throws. It's just, it could be the end of the road for it. So they bought your man Cornet this year, and you're kind of going, are they going to try and step away from it a little bit? A bit like what Stoke did, and before you know it, you're rotting away are they in the Championship or League One at this stage? I can't remember, but that's the whole point. I can't remember Stoke now. I don't know where they are, and you'd be afraid that are Burnley going to be the same, and that's where Sean Dyche needs to be a bit bold now, and maybe a change of attitude to try and maybe pull it out of the bag. But I just feel that kind of magic of I don't fancy Burnley now. It's like, yeah, I don't mind facing them, and I just have that fear. I can't see them. I think they'll be in it for the season. Whether they do enough to pull out is a different story, but I definitely think they're going to. I can't see them getting out of the bottom 5 for the whole year. That's the fear I have at the moment.
Yeah, there's a few teams that are down there with Burnley. I mean, you can look at Newcastle. People will say, oh, well, they have Saint-Maximin, they have Callum Wilson, who hasn't played yet, but they're still shaky. They're still down there, and injuries could kill a team like Newcastle. So you've got Norwich, who are already relegated, I think, mathematically now. But you do have other teams that are down there. Talk about Burnley. They do play 2 up top. You've said that, Neil. Is that something that a team should be worried about, that they play 2 up top and that's going to kill them? Or is that gone? Is it still, can people still play that way? I think Everton tried to play that way under Ancelotti at one stage, and you didn't see sort of results. Yeah, I didn't see results sort of booming for Everton that way. But what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, the 2 up top, right? Look, sometimes it can be valiant, and it's a way of, you're trying to get more goals, you're trying to be more attacking, you're trying to get more of a presence in the box. For Burnley, the reason why it worked was because they just completely bypassed their midfields. So the whole idea of the 1 striker and the 5 in the midfield was to overpower your opposition in the middle, create more space, outnumber their 2 with a 3, keep possession of the ball, and build up phases of play. Burnley don't really build up phases of play, they're just direct. So if it's the left back gets the ball, lob it up to Ashley Barnes or Wood, and you're trying to then get up and feed off the scraps. I think, as Dave has rightly said, what's happened is now teams have kind of sussed them a little bit more, where they're not defensively naive, they're not leaving themselves man for man attack. They'll have the fullbacks pulling around behind and being clever for the knock-ons. And maybe Burnley, a little bit like Leeds, as we were saying last week or the week before, when you're playing the same way for so long, maybe it loses a little bit of the appeal, and you feel you can't give as much as you can, because Burnley's plan is to upset and annoy and frustrate, and they're awkward and they're big. But when you take that away from them and you strip it back, at the end of the day, you have 2 big lads that are full of huff and puff and very little else. So maybe teams are just caught on and they're clever and they know how to deal with it. And maybe it's a psychological thing that teams are also saying, we can deal with this. This is no problem. Because remember, years ago, people used to go out to Arsenal and rough them up, and you knew you could get into them.
Yeah.
And then Arsenal change a couple of personnel, and all of a sudden that becomes a different problem. But mainly that's it with Burnley. They've kind of rode this for as long as they can now, and teams are just onto it, and there isn't that same intensity there. That's what it feels like to me, regardless of the 2 up front or not.
And even the way Everton
kind of found out.
Even the way Everton figured them out as well, which is very usually they'd have a vice-like grip on a lead like that, and it'd be really hard to get over the line. But Everton were able to figure it out and make a few tweaks and kind of steamroll them a little bit in the second half, which is not what you're used to either. So it signs are ominous, but who's to say? Sean Dyche has done a tremendous job, and there's no reason why he mightn't pull something out of the bag. But you're just a bit worried about them,
Liam says Burnley are great in the last 10 games of the season. I suppose that's why they never give up, is one of the things. And Liam saying that there as well. They'll go to the last game of the season. They'll fight for everything they've got. But Dave, is this where Sean Dyche really shows what type of manager he is? Because if he's only the one-trick pony, then after all his hard work that he's done there, and with investment coming into the club, maybe this is his time now to show what he can do, or maybe this is his chance that maybe he goes to another club, it'll disappear because they'll see that he hasn't really got the plan B or the C.
Yeah, like we only spoke about a few minutes ago, just how quick people's stars can fall, and like he's always got some great respect, and he even got Burnley into Europe as well, and I think it was a cup final, and now all of a sudden you're kind of like, that job that you really want isn't there, and you might have to just go sideways, and because that big step up is not there, and then he sticks around. Before you know it, he could be in the championship, and then none of them are coming back, and then you're a championship manager again, hoping to get promoted instead of sticking around. So it's a sticky situation for him. But to be honest, there's been talent around in the championship. I know it's big money, but Burnley have been there long enough to be able to be clever with what they've bought. I don't think they've bought a hell of a lot over the last few years. They've sold on a few, stuck with the same two guys up front who, I'm sorry, they just don't get enough. Wood had a bit of a purple patch last year. Barnes just hasn't had one at all for the last 2 or 3 seasons. Rodriguez is just a squad player at this stage. But they're still hanging around, and Goodmanson is there. The two boys, the back line are still the same, a bit similar to Spurs, They're a bit samey, starting to get a bit obvious and a bit easy to kind of to figure out. And it's a mixture of maybe he can't get who he wants, but also he can't afford to let go of what he has, even though, as I said, the bubble could potentially be burst.
Yeah, Neil, you have a stat there that kind of shocked me. I just looked at it. It's true. So throw it out.
Yeah, so the bottom 6 clubs have 1 win out of 30 games. Like, that's actually phenomenal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 odd draws in there. So it really is a fight of the worst. But they're probably lucky that your Burnleys, your Newcastle, Leeds, Wolves, Southampton, Palace are all equally more or less as bad as each other. The problem is, if you're the Leeds United and you're 5 games with 3 points, does that mean you're going to be 10 games with 6 points? You're in huge trouble at that stage. Huge trouble. So regardless if you're a Burnley or a Southampton or someone that might be used to being in the relegation battle, you have to start picking up points. You have to start picking up wins, because the longer that goes on and you multiply that by 10 games, 15 games, it's too late to wait to the last 10. You're already gone. And Norwich are definitely in that category at the moment. Burnley with 1 point after 5 games, regardless of their track record. And I'll give credit to Sean Dyche last year. When they were pulled into the relegation, he was cool as a cucumber. He was like, we've been here before. We know what we're doing. And we've a tried and trusted way of playing. It'll get us out of it. And it did. The belief was there. As Dave says, the question is, can they reach into that mire and go again? Can they reach in and pull something out? I don't know. But they're in good company with 6 clubs all being absolutely terrible on the first 5 games.
Yeah. Dave, Leicester City drew against Napoli during the week 2-2. Come up against a Brighton team who are up in the, I believe they're in the top 4. Are they in the top 4?
Yeah, I can see here.
Fourth, in 4th place.
City.
But it's a great start for Brighton. But for Leicester, we talked about this at the start of the season with Leicester. What needed to be changed to bring them onto the next level? What players needed to come in? What players needed to be taken out? We talked about Perez because I don't see what Perez gives to the team. I suppose our doubts about them are starting to come to fruition. They haven't stepped on to the next level. They're still that team who will be in and around and about. They're still relying on Vardy.
Yeah.
What does Brendan Rodgers have to do here, apart from buy players, I suppose?
Yeah, and we're kind of seeing a bit of a common theme here with a few of the things we're talking about. It's kind of like same old. And I suppose, like what I said about Liverpool, you have to make little tweaks and maybe slightly change it around. Like with Leicester, they're still very heavily reliant on the same 11 that they usually do. Not much has really come in this year. Daka, as I mentioned him a few times, I think is more potentially for the future, looking ahead or beyond Vardy, because like they're still heavily reliant on him. Obviously, Europe and the squad that they have, we all know the track record of the weekend games after Europe is always a bit of a minefield. But lose to a Brighton, and it's, as I said, like they've lost their last 2. Apart from it's the problem with the Premier League, and the big boys are so strong. They really are on a different planet. The league table is already starting to take shape slowly but surely, and we're only 5 games in, and the gap is huge, and it just really hammers home this year more than ever. And they were trying to break away and get even further ahead, as we all know last year. And it is going to start slowly taking shape, and Leicester are maybe going to creep into the top 10, looking at it there eventually. But it's a mammoth task. I think enjoy the glory while you have it, and then maybe just solidify yourself as an everyday Premier League side, because they haven't been back up for all that long, even though they've had some incredible success. Maybe they just have to realise that that's who they are now, is a solid Premier League outfit, and maybe they need to stay that way. And we've had a blast for a few years, but the bubble, not, I hate saying the same thing, but maybe that ship has sailed, and, that little flirtation with the top four is kind of gone for a while, unless they go through the whole thing again and have a 2 or 3 year process, bringing in a few new nuggets and a few new Kantes and Mahrez's as well to marry up with what they already have. But that's as good as you're going to get, to try and get that next big star before the big boys just come in and just take them. Look at Villa. Yeah, we'll take Grealish. He's ours. You get that year or two before the vultures come in and take them away. So it's very hard to say what they can do, because even if they do something right, the big boys will come in and take them.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it, though, lads, with the Europa League for Leicester? That's the big one.
Yeah.
That was a very intense game, I thought, during the week. It was a cracking game, absolute cracking game. But I had worries about them this weekend. That's why I put them down as dropping points, because I thought that was going to take a hell of a lot out of them, and it's proved to be.
Yeah.
Liam says they're one of the big teams. He's done a fantastic job, Deutsch. He deserves big praise, and a big team should try and get him. I think this season is going to show a lot if he's a plan A, plan B, plan C, or if he's just a one-trick pony. I think
United did it with Moyes, so they should do it again.
Spot, take him on.
Yeah.
Ole out, Deutsch in.
Very surprised Brighton 1-2-1. And they're doing fantastic. We're going to finish up now in a second, but we want to talk about Neil, Newcastle and Leeds. 1-1. It was actually a good game. It was end to end, but San Maximan if Newcastle don't have him, they're in big trouble. And in all fairness, Neil, can you even see him being there next year?
Do you know what it is? Callum Wilson, I think, is a good acquisition for Newcastle. If they just can't seem to keep him fit. But San Maximin is absolutely electric. Now, I watched the game, and the commentators kept referring to the crowd and how the crowd were reacting to different periods in the game. And the crowd at Newcastle are lethal. And I know a couple of Newcastle fans, they go over, and they're like, they almost feel the players in the field can hear you with everything that you say. And it's probably because they can. So it seems to be a very hostile atmosphere. Bruce never condemns them for it. He always comes out and says, listen, they're paying the money, they're appearing, they're right to voice their opinion. It's so unhelpful when your club is like that, when your fans are on the back. But that said, Sam Maximin turned the game basically by himself. A couple of runs. He was absolutely electric. Now, dealing with the likes of Newcastle when you're trying to buy a guy like Sam Maximin is a hell of a lot easier than dealing with Tottenham and Daniel Levy. So what kind of money could he go for? But for Newcastle, they need to hold on to him. But for everyone else around the Premier League that likes that kind of speed demon, you could play him anywhere. You could play him through the middle. You could play him out wide. And he scores goals, and that's the key. So there's not many of those guys around that are in that kind of ilk, especially the small, speedy type of guys. So be interested if someone does come in for him and what kind of money Newcastle would look for, because they never really extortionate too much since Andy Carroll.
As long as Ashley's there, he'll be sold. If a new owner comes in, they might have a chance because they can spend the money. Yeah. But as long as Ashley's the owner, he is going to be gone just as soon as a good offer's in.
Yeah, everyone has a price tag at Newcastle. There's no doubt.
Yeah. Norwich beaten 3-1 at home to Watford. Not much to say about that. They're already relegated. And Wolves and Brentford. 2-0, Dave, to Brentford. And again, my young fella asked me, is that their first goal in the Premier League? Not knowing that they won the first game. Yeah. But you look at Norwich. Again, I know I'm slagging Norwich, but really and truly, there's no ambition in that club to do anything more than get into the Premiership. But with Brentford, they're giving it everything they've got. And with Tony up front, they've got someone who will put the ball away for them.
Exactly. Cracking penalty to watch. And he had one or two more chances, but thankfully Mbeumo obviously had a couple more again this week because Tony was providing, and at least he put one away. But I'll say it again, if they can switch and do it the other way around, Brentford could be comfortably away from that bottom three if they keep at it. But listen, that's a great result for them. Big win. He's a big player. Hopefully he's enough to keep them up, because lads they'll be already sniffing and watching him, because he's a bit more than just a goal scorer. Like, he seems to have a bit of cleverness about him, bit of a provider as well. So the more they get out of him, the better. And then wait, goodbye.
We're going to finish off with Liam. Liam says, yes, he's brilliant. St. Maximin is an amazing player. 16.5 million they got him off Nice. It's a pure bargain. Listen, it is, and they probably only get 16.5 million now the way Newcastle are when they lose him out. But I cannot see him staying there. Listen, Dave, Neil, thanks very much. Thanks to everyone, Billy especially, and Liam for contributing, and everyone else who has watched. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share it out there with your friends, and we'll see you again here next week at 8 o'clock.